So, we welcome you all to Once in a Blue Moon Academia's 4th live broadcast in the series of OBMA talks. So, as you have already seen, that it is entitled that it's on the web-based social movement and social movements in general, and it tries to talk of a free and just society. Before going into all that, let us begin with a song. Do you hear the people singing the song of angry men? It is the music of a people who will not be slaves again. When the beating of your heart echoes the beating of the drum, there is a life about to start when tomorrow comes. Will you join in a crusade? Who will be strong and stand with me? Beyond the barricade, is there a world you long to see? Will you join in a crusade? Who will be strong and stand with me? Beyond the barricade, is there a world you long to see? Then join in a fight that will give you the right to be free. Once Bertolt Brecht said that during the dark times will there also be singing? Yes, about the dark times. With that note, we are going to start with the discussion of today's live session on social movement. So, with me, as always, I have Dr. Bandyopadhyay, and he will be telling us about the issues and the problems that are faced in the context of India. When we talk about social movements in the context of India, the various inconsistencies, obstacles, all the problems that are faced in the course of initiating or carrying out a social movement.
In fact, we are problematize our so-called nation state, India, that is Bharat. We have to understand the problems first. Then we have to go to our discussion of movement. Without mentioning the problems, it is impossible to start a movement. We have to identify our opponents, our problems, our miseries, which are caused by some X. So we have to identify them first. Before that, I must introduce the OBMA. OBMA, Once in a Blue Moon Academia. Please notice the word academia. I think academia means where epistemology is of anything, any problem discussed. So today's conversation with Akhar Bandyopadhyay, with me, and with you also, we want to interact each other, not only confined to only the DHL problem, but we will try to learn the lessons of initiating a social movement. How, why, where? This is our question. There are many WH questions linked here. So let us start with the problems. in which we are now suffering. See, in India, hunger index rank 107 out of 117 countries. Is it not a problem? Unemployment rate, 8.74% of the population. There is a accusation against us that in India there are three problems regarding this data. There is a data paucity, data opacity, and data denial. Despite there are two institutes here in Baranagar also, they are working on statistics. But there are three types of lies: lie, damn lie, and statistics. But despite that fact, we have some data with us. So let me elaborate those. Next thing is that please notice the crony capitalist index. Crony capitalism means there is a nexus between the corporate business tycoons and the ruling party. So that is called crony capitalism. In brief and in simple way, I am trying to explain you that. In crony capitalist index, according to the Economist, India occupied 9th position. It is 2016 report. In global crony capitalist index, having crony sector wealth that accounts for 34% of our GDP. That is astonishing in 2016, but now it is much more. So, and different institute like VDEM and Freedom House, they said that India is partly free. You maybe say that it is a colonial conspiracy, but I don't think so. My feeling is that we are lacking freedom, especially in case of freedom of press, freedom of expression. In case of freedom of press, all the mainstream media are occupied by two business tycoons. So, and the major commentators of these situations are now taking their recourse to YouTube. So in YouTube, you find many channels there against this type of governmentality within which we are now living. A dark time. It is better to call it the darkest time. Dear friends, if you think I am biased or prejudiced, please point me out. The positive perspective of this situation. Feel free to comment on the comment box regarding this. And another thing is that in Press Freedom Index we are in 161st position out of 180 countries. This is not a very good scenario. So let me start our conversation. I request Akho to elaborate much more. We are, though OBMA is an unregistered institute.
Like RSS.
We do not have that much strength, and
not that many weapons as well.
And we have no training center, militant activities, etc. We are totally for non-violent movements without hampering or collateral damage in anything. But we are for civil disobedience movement. That is the topic of our day. In any case, you have to face many problems in the coming years, and keeping in mind your progeny's future, please act. How to act? That is the question. We have to educate ourselves, we have to organize ourselves, we have to agitate. So what are the procedures of this agitation? That we'll discuss today.
Absolutely. And one thing has to be remarked at the very beginning is that he was introducing the activities of OBMA and how we must also understand that OBMA is not restricted to the DHFL scam, as we have discussed it earlier. If you kindly tell the viewers that it is not all about the DHFL.
Not all about the DHFL, we are thinking holistically. So we have identified two major problems. The first problem is the anthropogenic global heating, popularly known as climate crisis. And second thing is financial catastrophe. I don't want to use the word financial ecosystem because it is fallacious to compare the natural disaster caused by human and the market as a natural phenomenon. So I don't want to trapped by the fallacy of misplaced concreteness. It was told by Whitehead himself. Let us start. We have only two problems. We are concentrating on them. I am repeating that: catastrophic climate and devastating financial system. In the midst of money-based economy, we are now facing also the cryptocurrency. So it is a bleak situation how to manage our so-called quote-unquote wealth. And some people are heading towards moneyless society also and partyless society also. I must mention that we are for the partyless society, decentralized society, local resource-based society. So don't think us we are biased on any parties. We do not like that. Their operation, they do not mention the climate crisis, the biggest crisis now. So they are least bothered about that regarding the climate refugees and other such things. So keeping aside this climate crisis, today we discuss how to initiate, after identifying our problem, how to initiate the social movement. And remember that our agency is also to be questioned. Whose agents are we? In fact, when we are initiating a movement, agency is important because nowadays everything is subsumed by the multi-billionaire business tycoons. For example, we are using all these devices. These are the product of the corporates. And secondly, the thing is that he has a training on social movement from the Duke University. It is part of the course also. You are initiating a movement, but that is also sponsored by someone. Right. That's the problem.
Right.
So this sponsorship has a deep impact on the movement. I have a great experience, almost 30 years. I am engaged myself in different types of movement. I am initiated to movement. I was initiated to movement, from science movement to jute mill movement. I have a book on jute mill also, jute mill movement. All these are physical movement. Shingon Nandigram movement, anti-nuclear movement. When the smiling Buddha happened, we were on the road to protest against the nuclear weapons, and we are for the total disarmament also. We don't want to buy Rafale in increased price, or you may remember the Bofors scam also, where agent, someone named Chadda, he got a huge amount of money, in case of Rafale also, for this dealing. So I am remembering Einstein-Russell dialogue, and also the treaty when Einstein died. Bertrand Russell alone executed a meeting where only 8 signatories were there. They were against the armament and war. We are not supporting any war also. Now, let us start identifying all this problem.
Right. after identifying all those problems that he was talking about, we can now get down to the basics, so to say, because there are various ambiguities and various lack of understandings that exist when we are talking about social movements, be it in the context of India or in the context of any other nation state of the world. Thus, we are going to start with the very definition of a social movement. Before going on to the definition, I may say that this live episode of OBMA is being dedicated to E.V. Ramaswamy Periyar. Today is his birth anniversary, and to his novel contribution to the way social movement should be done in the context of India's social structure in relation to the caste system, as we all know.
We must emphasize that caste system.
Yes, and he also had said a lot about idolatrous practices and God, the existence of God in general. Let's not go into that for today.
We are dedicating it to Periyar.
We are dedicating it.
We are remembering him.
Yes, we are remembering him and taking inspiration from him. So, what do we mean by a social movement? We use the term frequently, but when it comes to fixing a definition, we stumble. A social movement can generally and broadly be defined as an agitational expression of collective behavior. So from that, we can understand it that it targets some aspect or the whole of the social structure and the functioning of the structure through various institutionally sanctioned norms, mores, customs, processes, etc., etc. The elements of a social movement are a certain group of people organized together, showing their solidarity on the basis of a common shared goal or shared interest. It has a certain we feeling or a sense of belongingness in it, in sociological terms. A key feature that we can note about all social movements is the coordination that exists both at the intra-movement level, that is, between the members of the movement, as well as at the inter-movement level, that is, when it expands its connection by connecting to other associated movements around the world. Moreover, I must also say in this context that the social movement has to possess a sense of commitment ingrained within the members who are carrying out or are involved with that movement. And we always see that we can always observe collective behavior in crowds, in mob behavior, in panics around the streets. These are all elementary forms of which are episodic, that is, they only exist or endure for a very limited period of time.
No, in case of lynching, what do you say? That is a hysteric behavior of the mob.
That is a hysteric behavior, but in this context I am going to bring in the issue where collective behavior of that form is to be distinguished from the collective behavior in the case of a social movement. So from these episodic elementary forms, when these short-lived impulses, so to say, gives way to long-term aims, long-term goals, and when sustained association or coordination takes the place in these situational groupings of individual people, the result is a social movement. It depends on the context, of course, because not always all forms of collective behavior turns into social movement. Here we can very briefly discuss two key theories in understanding social movement. So the first one I want to mention is the resource mobilization theory, which simply states that social movements form or get constituted when people who share the grievances or objections are able to mobilize the resources and take the required necessary action to that end. The theory places resources at the center of both the emergence and the success or failure or the outcome of those social movements. Another theory that I wish to mention, this was pointed out by Robert Merton, one of the key sociologists of the modern contemporary world, and he said that social movements are outcomes of the state of relative deprivation or deprivation. That is, he said that social movements arise when people who feel relatively disadvantaged or deprived when compared to the attested privileged groups of people. It may be a class, a caste, or any other similar social group. And according to this approach, when people compare themselves to these other groups of people, they may feel that they're suffering from some lack. From that sense of lacking, they join and engage themselves in the course of social movements with the hope of ending their state of psychological come other forms of deprivation. So, in this connection, let us bring in the Gramscian understanding. Antonio Gramsci, one of the leading Marxists who influenced the entire...
Under fascist regime, he was the voice of the people. At the time, he was in prison and wrote a prison notebook also at the time of Mussolini.
Yes. He has contributed a lot to Marxist literature and the revised studies of Marxist literature, much away from the vulgar Marxist traditions that we encounter in the official communist parties. Anyway, we can refer to a Gramscian understanding of the relation between the public sphere, that is, the domain where public opinion is manufactured, and the state, where the civil society acts as a mediator or intermediary between the two to voice the concerns of the day, the needs of the hour, through a sustainable elitist reception of both the public domain discourse as well as the governing classes' policies and other actions. However, this mediated indirect connection between the governing and the governed seems to have withered away with the loss in the culture of intellectual elitists. The absence of the politically conscious civil society that can serve as an accountable link in the chain amidst the two extremes between the governing and the governed, civil society is increasingly at stake. Sadly enough, however, this narrative could be overturned if and only if we can raise our argumentative voice by hitting the iron when it is hot. Now, I'll ask Dr. Bandyopadhyay to refer to the idea of political society in this case, and how it plays a part in this narrative. Please.
In fact, that political society, the term was introduced by eminent sociologist Partha Chatterjee. Not confuse him with that TMC's Partha Chatterjee. He is an eminent. In fact, Partha Chatterjee, Professor Partha Chatterjee, he introduced the term the political society. When state is directly interacting with its subjects, king or queen. I am using these terms as a metaphor. In democracy, where is the king, where is the queen? But we are living within the monarchy. So when king is interacting directly to the people by using some gifts, reuri, batna hai, this type of things.
Dole economy.
Dole economy.
Yes.
So in this type of interaction, there is no mediator. For example, once one of our prime ministers said that when we are introduced 100 rupees for a project, the last person who gets it, only 2 rupees. There are intermediary process also, but they are not mediators. They are just a sucker of money.
It's a trickle-down economy.
Trickle-down economy. We call this trickle-down economy. Drop by drop, they are getting without any mediator. And I am mentioning another thing, that the role of intellectuals at the time of descent. There are 2 types of intellectuals. If you have seen the Hirok Raja Deshe,
a film by Satyajit Ray.
Satyajit Ray, you can understand that there are 2 types of intellectual. One is Udayan Pandit. He is revolting against Hirok, the king, and
the autocrat.
And another one is a sponsored scientist, funded scientist. This first type, that Udayan, he is working for the or aiming towards the free and just society. He is called, according to Gramsci, is an organic intellectual. Yeah. He is not the part of technical intelligence here or inorganic intellectual like
collaborators of ruling class.
Collaborator of ruling class. In fact, nowadays all the scientific institutes are sponsored by corporate or the state ideology. This is matter of regret that they are all are subsumed. IIT, ISI, I am a ex-worker of ISI, so I know very well that how they are sponsoring, funding the organized science which is against the people's welfare. So this is simply the definition, if you may call it, the political society, and that political society is also now at stake because there are no voice of dissent, except I found that voice of dissent in recently that Bharat Jodo Jatra. I have seen the voice of dissent, but it is still to be organized fully as a great movement against the autocracy, religious extremism, and market fundamentalism. Market fundamentalism means free flow of private capital, MNC-controlled minimal state, etc. So let's see what happened to that I.N.D.I.A. I don't know. I can't predict now what will be happened to this type of coalition of different ideologies, different interest group. Okay.
Yes, he mentioned the term interest group. So we can also refer to another term, that is pressure group. Pressure groups especially play a great role in transforming an organized agitation into a social movement. A pressure group can be defined as a group of people who work together, right, to try to influence the decision makings of authorities, policymakers, and so on. This can also in turn challenge the very legitimacy of those authorities and force them to shift their positions or leave their positions altogether, what happens in the case of a revolution. So pressure groups engage in a sort of metaphorical coercion, or it may be a literal coercion. But in the case of civil disobedience movement, it is metaphorical. Interest groups, on the other hand, are a broader term. They share a common set of interests and can turn into pressure groups. In fact,
DHL groups are interest group, but they are not
pressure groups yet.
Pressure group yet to be
turned into
a pressure group.
A pressure group, yes. So they can turn into pressure group if they can use the element of compulsion, right, as part of their upsurge of their collective consciousness. And in saying that, I will now go on very briefly into the history of social movements, especially in India. So, if we move on to the history of social movements, both on the theoretical plane and on the realm of practicality, we can witness the beginnings of civil disobedience movement, specifically, since that is our point of emphasis in the present live broadcast. Civil disobedience stems from Henry David Thoreau's idea of a section of society openly coming into terms with the people in power by means of mechanisms such as tax evasion, willful non-participation or non-cooperation in the legitimized quote-unquote activities of the power structures. In this manner, one can turn down the hit and whims of the authoritarian systems as well as the thought control mechanisms, right? The state, the other power structures are trying to control the very means through which we think, we process, our cognitive processing.
Indoctrination and habituation.
Right.
These are the two words. I am summarizing his Acker's statements on this issue. This is called indoctrination. There is a huge propaganda machine um, just like IT cell of the BJP, and they are spreading false, and they are also caught by the others when they are saying this type of false statements regarding any issue. There is another group. I am especially mentioning Zubair, Mohammad Zubair of Alt News. He is a apt person for catching all these false news. So they are the richest party, so they can afford to have an IT cell. They are disturbing us too much with false news.
So yes, that's the bottom line, and we are talking about civil disobedience. And when we talk of civil disobedience, the obvious name that crops up is the name of Gandhi, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, and we can see this sort of the sort of civil disobedience mechanisms I was referring to in the course of Gandhi's movements in Champaran, Kher, in Dandi, when he we started with very few people, and then more and more people started to gather, and he openly condemned the salt tax, and we all know that. So Tolstoy and Ruskin's forms of anti-establishment philosophies also play a key role in shaping the socio-ontological. Ontology means the idea of being. Yes, yeah. Being is called ontos. So the socio-ontological basis of such movements, that is, by relating the individual person, me, the being, with the macro realm, the larger realm of participatory movements, against the established order of things by sabotaging, by carrying out acts of subversion, as they are technically called, or destroying from within the basic institutional apparatuses of the said system that is being targeted. We can see Shahid-e-Azam Bhagat Singh in the context of India, in the history of India, who used various propaganda through deed techniques to voice the concerns of the revolutionary consciousness. He used multiple methods that were intentionally non-violent in nature in order to subvert the British imperialist system from the perspective of its institutional apparatuses, namely the police, the militia, the parliament or legislature, the prison system, the penal system. This way of carrying out a social movement by exploiting a consciousness of the way the established power expresses itself across various institutional domains seems to be a relevant issue in discussing the method of pursuing social movements in general, even today. And initiators of social movements such as in India, such as Ambedkar and of course Periyar, often tried to attack the symbolisms or imageries of their attested enemy or opponent. For example, destroying Ganesha idols, which Periyar did, openly taking water from the place where Dalits are not supposed to take water from, and so on. Ambedkar himself said that the beginning of all social movement or social reform is when the individual takes an assertive stand against the multitude of prevalent opinion or state of affairs. We can even find in Raja Ram Mohan Ray's writings the similar postulation. So this is very important. He mentioned the famous slogan of Ambedkar, educate, agitate, organize, which is, I think, the very crux of all social movements or socio-political movements. And this way of performing social movement is similar in essence to what I referred to earlier as Bhagat Singh's institution-centric stance in carrying out attacks that would consequently lead to, in Singh's understanding, collective awakening of sorts, or the upsurge of public opinion on a large scale, autonomously unaffected by the manufactured lies or indoctrinated lies of the systemic apparatuses, the institutions of power. And last but not the least, we cannot at all forget to mention Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's name and his strategy. He came up with a sort of the idea of performing a military coup to topple down the imperialist system. Such a method of doing social movement is based on getting inside the quarters of the militia, the army, garnering support, and moving ahead with full abilities, capacities, come implements to storm and with those abilities to just go into the attested enemy's literal and metaphorical headquarters and storm it down with the power of revolutionary exertion, so to say. And that kind of revolutionary exertion is sharpened on the whetting stone of ideas, revolutionary ideas.
I want to add something here.
Sure.
Especially in the contemporary scenario, we have seen that in Pulwama attack, when Satyapal Malik, the ex-governor of Kashmir, revealed the fact of Pulwama. You all know that this is simulated action. A car full with 350 kg of RDX that attacked the Indian army. That has created a dissent among the army men. And second one is that recently China is encroaching different parts of India, which is a line of
actual control.
Line of actual control. So the military, I found in Twitter that military, our military force, army, they are not happy with this type of situation. That there is no action from the executive or other parts of the government, other pillars of government. They are not acting at all. They are not speaking about this type of encroachment, the Chinese imperialism especially. So nation state is at stake now. In Arunachal Pradesh, in Manipur, there are different type of dissent we have seen in recent days, the restless movement also. So I want to add this military strategy, and I want to mention not only strategy, the military, Navy, Air Force. Air Force is also
the entirety of the army.
Entirety of the army. And the Air Force. Air Force, many, they are also invested in the DHL Air Force. So they are also not happy with the solution regarding the biggest scam in independent India, Dewan Housing Finance Company. I must mention that. So one is Pulwama, army is unhappy. Two is the encroachment of Chinese
Red Army, yes.
Chinese Red Army, resistance. Indian militant resistance, there also is at stake. They are not happy with the role of government. And number three is the Air Force, who invested in the Dewan Housing Finance Company, Corporation Limited. They are also not happy enough in government's delayed decision.
Right. So when we are talking about social movements in the context of India, we cannot ignore the movements that took place in India post-independence. Independence under quotes. So in the post-independent India, we have seen several movements. He mentioned some. And we have seen the anti-Ram Mandir movement,
I was part of that.
Yes, we are coming to that. The anti-CA NRC movement.
I was also part of that.
And we can also talk of the Shingun Nondigram movement in West Bengal, India.
Yes.
The JNU students movement, of course, which was branded as being anti-national.
Urban Nakshals movement.
Urban Nakshals movement.
They branded it.
Yes. The farmers movement, of course, because that was one of the large-scale movements that post-independent India witnessed. Okay, so, and we can also think of the Bharat Jodo Yatra, previously referred
by me.
Referred by him.
And in Shingun Nondigram, I was also a part for a definite reason. Only one reason is that you can't destroy the topsoil. But in that group, who are resisting Shingun Nondigram Tata factory they are not, they were not agreeing with me regarding this ecological concern that we are lacking topsoils. Only 20% of the planet Earth we found this type of topsoil as it was found in Shingur or in Nandigram. We do not need chemical hub now at the time of climate crisis.
Right.
India is now a police state.
No doubts about that.
And the police state in this term was coined by J.B.S. Holden, the famous scientist. He said that England is a police state. I want to leave it and I want to stay at Boranagar, Indian Statistical Institute. So in the police state, it is very difficult to contest when judiciary is not working. I must mention Umar Khalid's name, Stan Shami's name. Stan Shami is custodial death.
Exactly. Murder.
Murder. Custodial murder of Stan Shami. All these things are the problem of physical movement. Because in case of Bhima Koregaon movement also, the government is taking cruel steps to stop that Bhima Koregaon, which is for the Dalits, which is for the Dalits, of the Dalits, by the Dalits. So there are various problems in physical movement. You have to organize a stage, you have to have some posters, you have some microphones and other such thing. It is expensive.
Yes, expensive.
It is too much expensive. You have to take permission from the police to protest against the government. So I am taking police permission to talk against the governmental dishonesty. This is the paradox. When we are signing our petitions in various platforms like Change.org and others, we have to, there is a term called chipping. We have to donate. When we are donating 500 rupees, it also includes the GST. So, making a movement, also we are taking government's assistance or government's
or contributing to the government in some sense.
Contributing to the governmentality.
Right.
This contribution, GST, they are taking GST when we are chipping in some protest against the government. So it is a peculiar paradoxical situation. So to overcome these obstacles, when Umar Khalid, without any justice, without any trial, he is in the jail. Sanjeev Bhatt, IPS, he is in the jail without any trial, and they are under UAPA Act. These all are the obstacles. So act anonymously. This is the first thing in web-based social movement. Act anonymously. Use mask.
We'll get to the examples. Yes.
Install some artwork. Create a song. In fact, at the beginning, he sang a song which is every revolutionary in different parts of the world use that song for their protest. So this type of songs we need mask, we need. It is difficult to arrange all things. It can be dismantled by the police also. On the other hand, I can irritate them, and they can also dismantle the whole situation, and there are possibilities of collateral damage in this type of physical movement. So better to nowadays it is better to reach the world, to convey your voice of protest to the world. Use internet. In fact, in Occupy Wall Street Andolan movement, Occupy Wall Street movement, in that movement, they use a slogan that to occupy Wall Street, occupy internet first.
Exactly.
So, in case of DHFL movement, we are taking the same strategy. We are spreading all these news, and it hurt the target person. He has filed a case against us, defamation case it is. He said that we have to compensate his loss in business, 100
Loss of
crore,
reputation.
loss of reputation also. So 100 crore defamation case, but we are not at all afraid because we know how to resist it, how to plead it.
Right. And also at the time of bio or chemical warfare, right? Physical gatherings may not be always possible.
Not always possible because they are using various weapons. For example, water gas cannon, water cannons, and plastic bullets. Sometimes they are using real bullets. In case of Nandigram, we have seen also that real bullets and other things. In this type of cases, you may see one film, two films I want to mention. You must view it. One is V for Vendetta, and another one is Joker. You may understand.
These are really popular films. Many of you know about them, but yes.
Yes, but they are using mask, and police can't identify who is the culprit for this type of movements.
The vigilante. Yes.
Vigilant.
Yes, so we have entered the discussion on web-based social movement or online social movement. And we may ask, what is this new kind of social movement? He has already pointed out certain key features of these movements. And this new kind of social movement utilizes at an optimum level the cyberspace to voice the concerns, mottos, objectives of the program adopted by the movement. We can take a few examples to understand this better and this kind of performing social movement. So we can begin with the Arab Spring uprisings. We may have read about it in the recently updated textbooks. In the Arab Spring uprising that took place, it started from 2010-2011. Though there were open agitations in the roads of Egypt, but the in the various Arab streets, there were open road agitations. But the use of social media also became very central. Research from the Project on Information Technology and Political Islam found that online revolutionary conversations often preceded mass protests on the ground during the Arab Spring, and that social media played a central role in shaping the very political debates in the Arab Spring, in the dissemination of information regarding the uprising itself. Although the impact of the social media seemed to be often uneven and uncoordinated across various geographical locations across Arab, yet its role was very important in shaping the movement itself. In this way, they also garnered international support in a globalized world, in a neoliberal globalized world. Then we are moving on to what he has already referred, the Occupy Wall Street movement. It has been the most popular anti-capitalist movement in the past few past decades. And the Occupy movement started roughly from around 2011 as well. And it was against the financial bourgeoisie system of share markets. And they used the internet in a great manner, in an extended manner too. They used it as a medium of communication, a medium for dispersing their central ideas of we are the 99% or we are the other 98%. They used hashtags on Twitter by using many profiles, online graffiti, blog posts that had a massive impact and reach in spreading their propaganda. Even the use of internet memes, right? Meme is a very convenient way of sharing an expression in the recent days. And they also used and still use internet memes to sarcastically subvert the capitalist complex. And he has already talked of the anonymity, the maintenance of anonymity. The use of camouflaging techniques to take part in the movement was also exemplified through the Occupy movement in order to move towards a more extended, non-individuated understanding of collective consciousness through the anonymity of personal identities.
In case of partyless society or moneyless society movement
Right.
also,
Yes.
They are using these type of things.
And he has talked of the use of masks, the use of Guy Fawkes masks, Dali masks, Joker masks. Yes, they point to the same in the case of physical movement in the Occupy Wall Street, as well as the use of proxy servers, VPN, virtual private network technologies in the online space. So you can carry both the physical movement at the practical level as well as the online movement. You can just coordinate between the two and switch over from one to the other or carry them on simultaneously. That depends on the context, the state in which the entire movement is in. So then we are moving to Egypt's internet revolution, that is also around 2011. Internet revolution Egypt, it is referred to as IRE in short. It is an Egyptian cyber protest against the internet services provided in Egypt on the Telecom Egypt that had the monopoly over those telecom services. The main Facebook page has about 1 million followers, the protest group, and continues to expand even today. And this significant expansion resulted in a widespread media attention across the world. It did claim to be apolitical in the first, but of course, all these movements and protests are political in nature. And the slogan used in the course of the Egypt Internet Revolution was, the internet services in Egypt are very expensive, very slow, the customer service is terrible. It mainly takes place on Facebook through a page created by a few Egyptian youngsters belonging to the 18 to 24 age group. Their activities also can be seen on Twitter. Now, it thus attached technological monopoly, the fact of attesting technological monopoly, infrastructural shortcomings, etc. through the social media. The social media, the fifth pillar of modern democratic age. As a result of this, even Egypt government shut down Twitter and internet for a temporary time period.
In India, in case of Kashmir and Manipur, government also closed all the internet services. Even in case of Joshi Mart also, which is at stake. We have no knowledge about this type of catastrophic situation because government banned it.
Exactly.
Closed the internet. Because it indicates the fear of the government. He has also faced the Damocles sword in case of this type of agitation. So they just close it. Close Kashmir, close Manipur, close Joshi Mart,
close Egypt.
Close Egypt. So this is their strategy.
Yes, that is what they always do when they cannot anymore listen to the song of protest. Anyway, we are going on to our next example of online social movement. We can cite the Stop Adani movement. The Stop Adani movement in Australia against Gautam Adani's coal mine project. It was from the perspective of ecological concerns as well as obvious economic reasons. And that movement used online selfie campaigns, right? Hashtag campaigns to resist the encroachment of the monopoly corporate by creating a grassroots network. Right. So we can very well understand from that how we have to perform social movements at this hour. And this Stop Adani movement started from a very early time. I think it started from 2012, and it's still going. It's still going on in some sense, although they have resisted the Adani's Carmichael coal mine. Yes. So we can understand the plexus of how web-based social movements, and if we talk about web-based civil disobedience movements, like we are trying to achieve. We can take inspiration and the necessary cue from these erstwhile or ongoing online movements across the world. One may also go through the examples of Green Socialist movement. He mentioned moneyless society and also the partyless society movement.
Occupy Dalal Street movement.
Occupy Dalal Street movement in the recent years, and how they have utilized the social media at an optimum level. Thus, after going briefly through each movement without the noticeable presence of pressure groups, the three pillars of democracy, namely the legislature, the executive, the judiciary, they cannot function, and the democracy would be crippled. It would end, after all. When one of the rest of the two pillars, that is the media, has become the Godi media, as termed by Ravish Kumar, and it is funded by the crony ruling party in India, you have to take your recourse to another pillar. That is the social media, the fifth one, which could create tremendous effect on the decision makings of the government, and it can affect directly the governmentality. However, you have to know the techniques of art of resistance against this autocratic crony oligarchy, and thus we have to learn the art of resistance. With that, I am going to ask the last question of today's session to Dr. Bandyopadhyay, and that is connected to our much discussed issue. How can one apply this new format of performing social movement in the context of the DHFL scam to resist the state of financial abuse or the curtailment of business-related human rights? Please.
We have discussed too much about this, especially the biggest scam in independent area before Hindenburg report. In fact, Ambani's secondary king is involved he initiated a buying process with the help of the ruling party, and that is contrary to law. But how to apply all these things, he said, as said by Akhar, in case of DHFL. I think the method is the same. You have to occupy the internet using some type of shield, so that no one can intervene your internet connection, or no one can occupy your space in the internet. So we have, despite there is a case against us, we have spread the knowledge of the information about DHFL in every possible site. This is called SEO, search engine optimization. These are also expensive issue. Making a shield, using VPN, another thing, API, etc. It is expensive. Still, we are using it without taking a penny from anyone. So, in this particular movement, in this biggest scam, I am requesting all the victims to be united without any enmity, or we are not competing each other, but our major goal is to getting, especially I am talking to the apathetic DHFL victims.
Most of them, yes.
Most of them. They must participate in this movement without looking at someone as a leader or someone is doing so much things, but they must participate it using all the means. In our website, we have mentioned almost 25 sites, or 25 plus sites, where we are operating our movement against the manufactured financial abuse. Even we have informed UN also. It is easier today. Just now, I am using my keyboard. I can send messages to concerned authorities. So
we are also on Spotify for podcasters from today, and we will keep on uploading the necessary podcasts on the DHFL scam.
So there are several platforms. You have to know how to use it. You must be a tech-savvy person. You can also take, if you have time, a course on social movement from Duke University also. it may cost 3,000 something, around 3,000.
You may also get financial aid.
You can also get a financial assistance from that university also. So techniques of social movement in web-based, especially in web-based social movement, we have to take recourse to these type of techniques so that no one can intervene into your domain. So we are taking various issues. I don't want to reveal all these techniques to you. You can easily find it out from the internet. In fact, in internet, what you are viewing is 3% of the internet, but other 97% is occupied by dark web. They call it dark web.
The deep web and then the dark web.
Deep web and dark web. And there is something called onion router.
There are other ways of
things also, so that you can override, you can commit crime in these things. You can sell narcotics, etc.
Weapons.
But you can also use it for your real cause of miseries.
Absolutely. So, with that, we have reached the very end of our discussion, very brief discussion of the various dimensions
of... Very brief, almost 1 hour, 1.5 hours.
But it is brief in relation to the topic we are trying to explore.
Yes, it's a big topic.
Social movement has so many dimensions, and all those dimensions cannot be covered even within 1 hour. We can see in the background a framed photo of a few anarchists. We, as the representatives of the partyless democracy or the partyless society movement, can refer back to them, like Tolstoy, Thoreau, Bakunin, Kropotkin, and many others. And not only those individuals, also those who have remained unnamed but have contributed to the understanding of movements without any authority, without any leaders. These are the horizontal movements that can be performed. And with that note of anarchism, I want to end with one of the remarkable poems during the Romantic Age, or the Age of Romantics. It's called the Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley. And in this poem, Shelley indicates the inevitable decline or fall of all leaders, empires, power structures, no matter how invincible they may seem for a time. All power structures are self-destructive. They contain this element of destruction, of their own destruction within themselves. But what social movements can do? They can inflict blows on its weaknesses. Right? We have to identify the weakness and then subvert. In that manner, we can assert our identity as part of the social movement. We have to think globally and act locally at a time of globalization. So thank you everyone who were with us today. Dr. Bandyopadhyay, do you want to say anything else or add anything else to this?
Nothing to add, but I have one appeal or a request to you that please participate in this type of web-based movement.
We have got tired by repeatedly asking everyone to participate.
Especially in the signature campaign, in the petition posted in Change.org.
On DHFL scam, yes.
On DHFL scam. And you can protest against any type of discrimination committed by the government, any type of government. In fact, we love our planet, but not our government. This is our stance. So don't confuse your country with your government.
Exactly. And do not be afraid to tell political truths outrightly. Just because you support a particular kind of party which commits heinous acts that are anti-people in its very core, but you cannot just go on supporting it when it is a direct cause or indirect cause of your misery that you are currently facing. So please don't stumble or stop when you are talking about political affairs, and you have to think politically and act politically, because you are, after all, a Zune Politicon.
Yes, this is the signifier of or symbol of our protest against the political discrimination of any type in anywhere. We are heading, we are craving, we are striving towards a free and just society with horizontal mutual aid, not with hierarchical, vertical structure,
Regimented power structures.
regimented power structure. We have to resist those powers, those manipulative use of power
Exactly.
for gaining money, profit, etc.
Absolutely. So with that note, we're going to conclude today's session. Thank you for listening, and please continue to view OBMA's activities on its various web-based platforms, and be active. Don't be apathetic. Don't be passive. Thank you.
Thank you very much.